All right, good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the AI Hype, How Governance Turns Potential into Performance. Please join me in welcoming Tim Long from Snowflake, Vishwa Ram of Penske Logistics, and our discussion leader, Shanton Wilcox of NTT Data.
Thank you, everyone, for spending the first part of the afternoon with us and being brave to attend a session right after lunch. So thanks for the time. I think given the size of the audience, we can be pretty interactive and a little bit informal. So as you have questions, feel free to interact with us. I think we can respond off the cuff, if you will, but look forward to that opportunity. I think as we talk about this topic and really sort of the focus on turning potential into results, we're going to get a little bit pragmatic, right, and be a little bit in the weeds, but be very realistic around some of the experiences that the team has had and what they've done and the way that they've been able to bring these solutions to life and quote, get beyond the hype. So let's start out of the gate with sort of the tough one, which when you look at data management and these efforts within AI, what are some of the things that you've both seen in terms of sources that erode that potential and really make it difficult to achieve those results? So Vishwa, would you start us off?
Yeah, absolutely, Shanton. I think that's an excellent question to start with. Because here's the thing. The value of AI, sometimes does erode over a period of time. And the biggest risk with AI isn't really a failure, but it is a quiet irrelevance. So we have experience with this. A number of years ago, we built a model for driver retention. And the model predicts which drivers are at risk of leaving us and why, giving our frontline managers insights that they can use to better support our drivers, who, by the way, make more than half of our entire workforce. Now, this model worked. It reduced our turnovers significantly. However, as time went on, the economic conditions changed, our data changed, our business shifted, but the model remained the same. And so there wasn't the sudden failure of the model, but there was just a slow degradation of results over time. Now, fortunately, we had been monitoring the performance, so we were able to catch this drift quite fast. But that really highlights the importance of continuous monitoring, retraining, and governance, because model drift or data drift doesn't really announce its arrival; it creeps in, and if you're not tracking its performance against business metrics, and you have post-deployment feedback loops built in, it's almost always too late to catch it, and you will catch it, and you will miss the key signals. And by the time you do, it's always really too late. And this is the reason why we have to treat AI as living systems, one that adapts to its changing environments, and not a set-and-forget solution.
Great, that's a good perspective, I think, is maintaining active monitoring of that as it progresses through time. Tim, as you sort of take a little bit of a step back and look across industries and some of the clients that you see in Snowflake, what do you guys see?
Yeah, so I would start by saying that at Snowflake, we believe the most important part of an AI strategy is your data strategy. And so just to reinforce Vishwa's commentary there around being able to monitor data drift, the quality of the models over time, that's really important. But it's also important to invest in a very strong data foundation. And I'll give you an example, right? AI, as we know, is incredible at making sense out of all kinds of data, structured or unstructured. But the best results from AI are those that come from giving it the right information to ask for the question that you're asking. A customer that we have had an example where they had their data in Snowflake, but some of the columns were the result of combining, multiple data together. So think of like a design and a model number in the same column. Easy for humans to make sense of that there's two different data types in there. But the AI struggles to understand that that is actually, in fact, two different meanings. And so when they'd ask questions about models or they'd ask questions about designs, they weren't getting the answers because they simply didn't tidy their data to begin with. So I think it's really important to give the AI every advantage you can to get the right answer by investing in a strong data foundation.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think something that we've done, we've sort of parallel passed some of our investment internally, where obviously we're investing in AI and the capabilities there, but because of that exact factor, we've also in parallel built our ability to work with our client to assess the completeness and the quality of their data set day one. So even coming out of the gate, to your point, we understand where there's some weakness, where there may be some assumptions that have to be made to get us to a point where we can actually apply that data to the model and be able to help achieve those results. So totally agree. And I think that sort of dovetails next into the next question pretty well is we've all been through some of these hype cycles in these areas over time, and whether new technologies have come out and sort of been the next bright shiny object that is going to solve all of our problems within operations. Your points of view on really, does AI truly help, or does it add noise to the operations and to the efforts and to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve? So Tim, from your guys' perspective, is this sort of a technology hammer looking for a nail, or does it really drive value?
Yeah, so I think the key thing here is to remember the goal of implementing AI or machine learning is to really, beat the status quo. Can I have a model that outperforms how we make decisions today, make decisions better, faster, and also without creating new risk for the organization? And if you can do that, then you've met that threshold. So I think organizations who may be focused on making sure I get the perfect answer and I never get a hallucination and I never, I know it's the best model possible. That's really not the standard that drives business continuous improvement. So I think that's the first thing that I would recommend. The other thing about making sure that you're creating value in the organization is really just a reminder of how important it is to set up the validation of these projects to ensure that you're measuring business impact. There's no better way than through a controlled experiment. We don't use those as much internal in business. We use them all the time. A/B tests, for example, with our customers and products. But I would encourage all of us to think about how could I design an experiment that really proves the value of this new capability delivered through generative AI. If you're going to inject generative AI into your marketing processes or content development, how will you know that the effect of it is actually an improvement? And I think that can only come through controlled experimentation.
That's great. Vishwa, as you've sort of taken some of those efforts, as we talked previous, from the lab to operations, what have you seen sort of help in that area?
So I think the real question here, to me at least, is are you measuring business value or are you measuring model output? Right? So your model can be 99% accurate, yet generate zero business value. And this is the reason why it's really important to agree on what the success metrics are right up front, align with them with stakeholders, and have a mechanism to actually track it. And we saw this with a model that we built to predict which of our orders in our warehouses are going to result in a defect. Now, the lab metrics looked fantastic, right? But we didn't actually see defects go down until we uncovered a process gap and fixed it alongside the model. And another aspect of this is the fact that noisy data creates noisy AI. And we're all in supply chain, and we're all very proud of the amount of data that we collect. Thousands, even millions of data points every single day. But let's be honest, most of that data is not AI ready. And if you go take that data and feed it to a model, what you get is not clarity. What you get is just more noise. And it's sort of like, you can't hear beautiful, harmonious music through all of that cacophony, right? And that's why it pays to invest in a modern data tech stack with a data platform like we did with Snowflake, which enabled us to really create a trusted, consistent, and a governed data set, unified data set that is, in fact, AI ready. So from my perspective, if we want to get rid of noise in AI, noisy AI, it is really about ensuring that you focus on the business outcomes, that you really get your data AI ready, and double down on data governance.
Yeah, completely agree. And maybe a little bit out of the ordinary on this one, but we've actually worked with clients even recently where they've wanted to sort of kick off an AI pilot in a certain functional space, and we looked at the underlying business application they were using in that space, and there was a lot of functionality left that, untouched that they hadn't even used, and sort of even trying to advise them to say, look, there's more that you can get out of the investment you've already made and the technology that you have instead of putting AI on top of this. So to your point, focusing on the business results you're trying to achieve, understanding what technology you have available to you, and then determining, is AI the right piece to add to the puzzle, or do I have enough and I just need to sort of tighten the dial a little bit to sort of get more out of what I got today. So I think that's a great perspective. I think the other thing, to your point, that we get into, and it sort of leads us into our next question is, you've chosen AI, you've laser focused on the business outcome or the results you're trying to achieve. How do you make sure you have the data, if you will, to quote unquote feed the beast? So we talk about data governance, and that tends to take a little bit of a negative connotation when you bring up the word governance. You think sort of bureaucratic and a lot of no's instead of a lot of yeses when it comes to governance. So I think is Tim, maybe if you could sort of start us down that path in terms of your point of view on data governance and what role it plays into driving value out of AI.
Yeah, I think a few different things on this, on data governance, importance it has here. So one is, I liked how you said, it's often the no's that outweigh the yeses, and I think it's critical for organizations to have a very balanced approach to not just control, but also to enablement. And the big symptom that I see in organizations that have poor data governance is everybody's does all of their data work out of Excel. And they spend hours every week refreshing the same spreadsheets and copy and pasting the output of those into, to PowerPoint for whatever presentation. And what that means is two problems. One is you don't have a copy of your data on somebody's desktop, and two is you're not really using repeatable, efficient, scalable techniques available through modern technology. So our goal, when we talk about governance, it has to really be equal parts protecting information, intellectual property, complying with regulations, of course, for things like PII or HIPAA. All of those are really, really important, but you also need to focus on how you're going to enable your organization and access to the data they need and give them the tools they need to be efficient and successful in their role.
Yeah, absolutely. Vishal, what have you guys done that has helped make your AI investments successful?
So, it's funny that you chuckled when you said data governance, because that's generally the response you get. So, AI, if all of the excitement is with AI, because that's, think of it as the dessert, data governance is the broccoli, right? I mean, it's not flashy, but it's absolutely essential for long-term health. And really, data governance really encompasses a whole lot of things, right? I mean, security, compliance, policies, and so on and so forth. But I'm going to focus a little bit on the data quality management, because we know having high-quality data is absolutely critical. Without high-quality data, even the most sophisticated AI systems can fail. And so, you start with, what does bad data even look like, right? So bad data can be incomplete. Think of a shipment record that lacks shipment date. It can be inconsistent. Think of a supplier name that's spelled 3 different ways across 3 different systems. Or it can be inaccurate. Think of a trailer that says it is 80% full when in fact it's only 50% full. So how do you go from this bad data to data that's well-governed and is AI ready? Well, at Penske Logistics, we follow a three-legged stool approach: manage, monitor, remediate. Manage to us is like managing data like any of our other data assets. We catalog it, we know where it came from, and we know how it connects. Think of it as a library. If you don't have a catalog, it's hard to find what you're looking for. You don't know where the book is. You don't even know what to look for. So the second piece to this is monitor. And by that, I mean having business rules and machine learning that can identify this incomplete, inaccurate, and inconsistent data consistently, and really flag it before it shows up in a report somewhere. And then the last piece is it's not just enough to know where the problems are. You need to really have a plan to go remediate this data. So, if the shipment date is not in your shipment record, is it because it wasn't contained in the EDI transactions that your customer sent you? Or is it because somebody didn't key that information in like they were supposed to? And so this process of manage, monitor, remediate really does improve your data quality, but it does more than that. It improves the trust and confidence in the underlying data. And one thing that we do know is when people do trust the data, they're going to use it. And they're going to use it to make decisions. And that's really how you go from shiny AI experiments to really, really extracting value and creating impact through AI.
Yeah, and similarly, as we sort of look at that same situation with our clients, and we often spend 3 to 4 weeks of every supply chain consulting project remediating the data requests that we got from our clients, right? No fault of their own, but there are gaps in it, there are inconsistencies, and that parallel investment that we made, ironically, is applying AI to a data set to get AI, where we're building ML scripts to identify where there are those inconsistencies in large data sets, where there are gaps, or where we're seeing trends in sort of deterioration in the quality of the data. So completely agree that looking at that and understanding that you have that sort of foundational asset that you're using, where then you're applying the AI to those things is the right formula. In addition, I had an opportunity to present at a supply chain conference earlier this year on AI and supply chain, and also sort of highlighted 2 key takeaways in terms of what our recommendations are to our client on this topic, which is go back to your processes and look at any step in that process where you have manual data entry and try to eliminate it, right? That's a source of input error where you're really then opening yourself up to that being an issue with quality going forward. And then where there are certain aspects or fields or characteristics of the data that are critical, like a customer number or an order number, those things that sort of link data sets together, understand how those flow through the software that you use to run your day-to-day processes and lock those fields. And I agree with you, right? It's about enablement, but in certain fields for certain data sets, it's also about controlling that data so that it does not get corrupted, because it plays a different role in linking data sets together over time. So I think we're all in violent agreement in terms of the level of effort going into, let's say, manage the underlying data so that you have that quality foundation to build these investments on. So as that then sort of transitions, right, we got the right technology, we got quality data, we're focused on sort of a business result. How do you then go get the money, if you will? How do you actually achieve those results and drive the output that you're looking for? You want to start us off in some of the stuff that you've done at Penske to get to there?
Yeah, absolutely, Shantan. So I think to me, getting value comes down to really 3 things. First is trust in the data. Second is fit in the workflow. And third is clarity of outcome, right? So, let me actually give an example. We built a model to estimate the utilization of a trailer and its load stability just from a picture of a trailer. We use a large multimodal model to do this. Now, this was really a technical achievement. We went from just an idea to pilot in a matter of weeks. But the real work started at that point, right? So first is trust in the data. Our operations really wanted to know, is the model actually seeing what we think it is seeing? So we had to really spend time validating, using actual measurements, loading reports, people's experiences. And only when the results started matching consistently did operations start to rely on it. Second is fit in the workflow. Now, a model like this sitting in isolation isn't really helpful. It has to seamlessly plug into the flow of operations and really needs to plug into where the decisions are really being made without adding any extra steps or slowing people down. And the last, finally, it is really the clarity of outcome. This model was never really about showing off AI can see inside a trailer. It was about improving cubic utilization. And once we connect that prediction to that particular tangible goal, is the business value clear, and can you actually extract the business value? So as I say, AI doesn't succeed because it is clever. It succeeds because people trust it, because it fits naturally with the way people work, and it is aligned to the outcomes that the business actually cares about.
Perfect. Couldn't be said better. But Tim, from your point of view, some of the things that, to follow Vishwa's stellar commentary, that you've seen really work with clients to generate tangible results.
Yeah, I just double down on the business outcome point there. I think that the most important step in identifying these opportunities for AI to make an impact is to start with the true business problems. So many times when I meet with customers, they want to know what are the recurring use cases that other customers are doing, and I can share those. I'm happy to share those, but more important to me is having a conversation with you about what challenges you're facing within your business or within your supply chain specifically, and then I can position the winning strategies I've seen really, across our customer base. And so it's just a reminder of how important it is to really start at the top there of what's the business strategy, the business challenges, and then what data investments, what analytics investments, what AI investments are then appropriate to address that challenge. So that direction is really important there.
Yeah, I think as we go through these and understand it's tough to get away from the AI hype, right? It's a lot of the headlines today and what most articles are written about, I think. But even your ability to go back and sort of state a clear business problem, understand different paths, because AI might have not been the only option on the table to go solve that problem. But more importantly, then generate the information that the business needs to make a different type of decision relative to that challenge or that opportunity. I think at the end of the day, we would almost prefer if AI sort of slink a little bit back into the shadows, right? And give us a little bit more latitude to find the right solution for the right problem versus starting with AI first, maybe in every situation. But I think those types of focus on the completeness and quality of the data and focusing on the business outcomes is great, but it's not until you apply those results to the business decision, actually integrated into the day-to-day operations and the tasks associated with the users involved, that you're truly generating value. And I think that sort of leads us to the next one is as we talk about sort of running the pilots, or as you said in our calls, right, sort of going from the lab to operations. What are some of the real tangible things that people can do now, right? Right in the short term, if you will, sort of this quarter, this month type of thing, what would be your recommendations based across your experience in making these investments and generating these results that would help the people sort of get really tangible about what's next?
So one simple thing, right? The fastest way to build AI is to build it with those who are going to actually use it. And if there's one thing that you want to do tomorrow, it is this, and it's probably the easiest thing. Bring business teams directly into the development process. Because when you build models in isolation, adoption struggles because users don't feel a sense of ownership. But when you bring business teams in the loop, when you involve them from the start, they help you define the problem, help you set success criteria, help test the model outputs, and through that process, the model that you're developing becomes more credible, it becomes more relevant to the problem that you're trying to solve, and ultimately you see a more widely adopted tool. Now we saw this with a supplier risk prediction model that we built. We worked side by side with our operations and our material follow-up teams in our inbound supply chain, and really they helped shape the model. So they trusted its output, and the adoption was almost immediate. And so this is the sort of ownership that helps you take projects and pilots and turn them into really scaled AI solutions across the enterprise.
Perfect. Yeah, completely agree. I think as you sort of joke in other situations where you design with the end in mind type of situation and you get that audience, we won't say hands on keyboard, but pretty darn close to being that partner shoulder to shoulder in designing the solution and consuming the output even through the pilot phase and stuff to give feedback in that loop around what can be improved and looking at the opportunity to scale. Again, Tim, from your perspective, as you look maybe a little bit across industry or helping clients get out of the gate on these types of investments, what do you think some real practical, tangible next steps are?
So I really like Vishwa's emphasis on building sweat equity in your stakeholder community. I think that's key. I think, really building these models is the easy part. The hard part is change management in general. And that sweat equity component there is really critical to success, but also as leaders, it's important to consider the entire organization when this change is occurring. Somebody's job will be different with this new technology. Hopefully they like it for the better. Hopefully it makes their job more fulfilling, more rewarding, more efficient. But you need to think about how that change will affect them, and you also need to think about how to gain support for this change all the way up to the executive level, because they're ultimately accountable for the results. I remember talking with our CEO where we had built a better forecasting solution. I had a better demand forecast and I could prove it. And he tempered me with a reminder that all these people, their job depends on the performance of the business, and they're not going to just take some risk with a black box. Because you can prove it's better. You need to really think about how you're going to help them move from the current methods to a better set of methods, and one of those ways is to include them for sure, but also just to make sure that you're handling all the different dimensions of change management, because ultimately this is about people.
Yeah, I think that's a good aspect that we maybe haven't sort of delved into quite as much. I mean, we all talk about AI. There are certain aspects of AI that have existed for decades, right, around ML and those types of capabilities. Definitely new technology sort of hitting very quickly in the AI landscape where now we're talking about agentics, which is sort of the next horizon, that type of stuff. I think as you talk about bringing the user closer, and Tim, you sort of brought us into a new conversation around sort of the change management side of it, because there may be as much hype or more concern to equate to the level of hype around this technology relative to some other technologies. As you look at the number of studies that look at things like job losses, right, and people being displaced by this technology. I mean, you talk about bringing the user almost into the development process. Have you worked with other parts of Penske as you implement these solutions to really demystify them or allay concerns around what sort of the steady state looks like with these types of solutions in operation? Can you talk a little bit about that, Vishwa?
Yeah, Shanton, absolutely. And I think part of adoption is really, a couple things, right? One is working with your teams who are actually going to use it and using it where decisions are being made The key questions that the operations are always going to have is, can you explain to me how did this arrive at the solution? And what we know about AI is that it's black box, and even the best data scientists can't actually answer that simple question, now where did the answer come from? We have gotten a lot better since we originally started this journey, to where we do have mechanisms communicating how that solution did come about, and how can somebody actually use it. It's a part of training our data scientists and people who implement it, but it's also training the end users in helping them understand where are the boundaries, where are the limitations of these tools, where should they really be supplanting their judgment for AI's judgment. And this has been key, because it's as long as there is clarity from both ends, you do see that there is adoption, because it is viewed as a tool that can help me, can assist me in my role, as opposed to, is it really thinking for me? Is it doing a job that better than I can do?
Right. And as you talk about, and this may be getting really into the weeds, but the actual delivery of the output of that tool to sort of the user to affect the business decision, are you doing that in means that are familiar to them? And I'm just throwing stuff out there, like a dashboard or that type of result, or how are you managing sort of that exact point of integration between the output of a model that again, you and some very smart people spend a lot of time developing and putting together, to the point of the actual user, and making it familiar in a way to them that it just becomes a part of normal operations? Can you talk about that exact point of integration?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good question, Shanton. I love it, because ultimately the model is producing outputs. But you have to sit and think about how are those outputs going to be consumed by the end user. And you have to figure out, how do you really interject it into their existing process? So in a lot of cases, what we have done is integrated it with our dashboarding mechanism, our visualization tools like Tableau, which is where we know that a lot of our operating teams are spending a lot of time anyway. It is not a new tool. As far as they're concerned, it's an insight that's available to them in order to be able to do their jobs better, but they don't necessarily have to learn a new system, learn a new tool, develop an entirely new skill set in order to be able to consume something. And so the end goal for us always is really to make the process of consuming the information from AI simple, almost as simple as maybe using your iPhone does not require a user guide to go with. And that, we feel, is really key to really, top-level adoption.
Perfect. Tim, what have you guys seen as you look again across a little bit of a larger user base, and what some of your clients have done to almost make it seem like business as usual in some ways?
I would say one of the, just to your point of making it integrated into the existing software fabric of your organization, a lot of our customers are creating these solutions and exposing them through, applications like Teams, Microsoft Teams, or Slack, because they know their user base are already comfortable working in those environments. So it's an easy extension from that versus some new application that they need to, credential and deploy and manage. And so that's one way of making these solutions more accessible. So we see a lot of those type of bots, these agents now coming online through these different chat portals that are already available. The other comment I wanted to make, we talked a little bit about dashboards, and I've been working in dashboarding now for a long time, and I always, as a user, I always found it frustrating to use the dashboards, because ultimately the questions I would ask, the dashboards would have limitations. The developer was only able to really foresee some of the standard questions, and that's how these get created, in fact, is you write down all the questions that somebody might ask of the data, and you build the facts and dimensions to serve them up in a dashboard. Now what we're seeing with artificial intelligence is I can marry a chatbot with the dashboard, where I can ask that second, third question. I can drill down beyond the whatever the developer had thought you might want to see. And so I think that's a real big unlock for organizations. It's another one of those things that I think will help to take care of the download to Excel button, that everybody, uses is the most popular button in Tableau is download the data. And I think that capability now coming online is going to be really valuable. And then the third thing I'll mention, as we try to understand how these AI models are coming up with their answers, within our product, you see how they're thinking. They deploy, they share the steps that they're taking, and that you can drill into them. You can see the query that it ran, the tables it used, and you can identify the errors in the technique, right? Say, no, you shouldn't have done that. You misinterpreted. You should have looked at these tables over here, or I said inventory. What I really meant was WIP. Not finished goods. These are the things that you can provide that feedback to improve these models by watching them think, which I think is really cool. So I think there's a lot evolving as the AI becomes more capable of transforming our businesses, and we all play a role in helping them to be successful.
Yeah.
Just add a point.
100%.
Tim just said. I think, Tim, you said something really interesting and important, and it is this concept of dashboard fatigue. And a lot of times people ask, where is Gen AI really going to help us? I think this is one area where we've been really quite excited about with all of the developments that have come from Snowflake and other partners of ours, is really the ability to interact with data in natural language. And what that does is that it reduces the barrier to analytics. By that I mean, you don't need top-level analysts interacting with the data and asking questions, or you need them to answer your questions. You can do that yourself. And building those interfaces into the data so that you can ask questions, we call them chatbots, but it is really more sophisticated than that, I think is really a very key delivery mechanisms that we've started investigating, and we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, completely agree. And Tim, I think you sort of painted a great picture where we're all used to dashboards, and you're sort of clicking and you're doing the drill downs, and you sort of then get to a point where the dashboard is no longer useful, and you got to go to the underlying application to continue the query, if you will. I think the concept of having that if you will, phone a friend, interactive in that environment where you're asking the bot questions and it's helping you take different views of that data and understand and pull additional insights makes it more of an immersive experience. And I think that's sort of what we're looking for is the opportunity for the information to tell a story to affect a business decision in a way that the user doesn't feel like they're being trained. It doesn't feel like they're trying to figure out what the answer is going to be. They're interacting with the data in a way that they may not have conceived of in the past. And understand it's a long way to get there through all the investments we talked about and all the efforts to manage the data and get the technology aligned. But I think sort of achieving that output is the true opportunity to turn that investment from the potential into the result. So great conversation. Any other points you'd like to give the audience before we wrap up?
Okay.
Just have a few minutes left, so I didn't know if there was any nuggets you wanted to leave behind.
Sure. I think if I think about all the things that we talked about today, really it all comes down to this one thing. How do we really make AI real? And there's an old quote. I mean, technology moves fast, but adoption moves at the speed of trust. And so the question is, how do we really earn that trust? It is through a couple of simple steps, right? It is investing in a data platform, building and executing a strong data governance framework. And then lastly, it is really aligning the business outcomes with the goals of your AI program. And so, if we do this, we build trust, and if we build trust, the results will follow.
Perfect. Tim, tough to beat, but go for it.
You got to start going first on these.
I know.
I mean, I agree with everything Vishwas said there. I think one thing, as I look forward, what I'm very excited is the concept of automating work with AI. So we think of it generally as I have a question, and instead of searching the internet, I'm going to ask this AI instead and just get the answer. That'll still be there, but I think what we're excited to see is this agentic AI Think of this as sort of your, an intern level capability today, but that will graduate into more, complex thinking and research capabilities and tasks that they can do. And so we're starting to see those come online across our customer base, whether it's customer service agents. And I like to think of it, the world of computers and robotics automated repeatable tasks, right? That was their first role. And that's where we're seeing AI affect change here, is by automating repeatable decisions. And so these agents are coming online, and I'm very excited to see how they're going to transform business over the next year.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to wrap up on, and maybe we sort of set the hook a little bit maybe for next year, where we're back here talking about agentics and how they drive sort of cross-functional value in these types of investments and in the cross-functional business decisions that we're all faced with on a regular basis. So thank you both. Appreciate the insights and the perspectives and the experience in bringing these solutions from potential to results. Appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, I think we'll mill around for a few minutes afterwards, but thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.